Have you ever wondered why Ursula is as evil as she is? Once you've heard the secrets behind The Little Mermaid, you'll understand why the sea witch is so angry. Keep watching to discover Ursula's fascinating past as Vanessa and her major sibling issues. You'll be shocked.
Do we have a deal?
Ursula seems to be a sea witch with a bad attitude in The Little Mermaid, but there are plenty of reasons why she's out for revenge against King Triton, and why she used Ariel's voice, and why she transformed into Vanessa too. We're delving into all of this to give you a look at the truth behind Ursula's tragic backstory, starting with her childhood. Ursula and King Triton. Did you know that Ursula and King Triton are brother and sister? An original draft of the 1989 movie positioned the pair as siblings. There was an alternate opening scene with a long version of the Fathoms Below song. And in that song, the sailors explicitly talk about Ursula being King Triton's sister. Ron Clements, the co-writer and co-director of the movie, explained why the scene was cut. They shortened the opening simply because they wanted to get into the story faster. But by doing so, they lost the exposition that the sea witch and the king are siblings. So that makes Ursula Ariel's aunt. However, the film didn't make that link clear in the end. It's debatable as to whether the idea was kept as canon in the main franchise. However, there is one place where that relationship did get played out, and that's in the stage musical version of The Little Mermaid, which opened on Broadway in 2008. We learn all about the siblings' past in the song I Want the Good Times Back. Ursula sings about how they were each given equal shares of the sea when their father Poseidon passed away. They were also given a magical object each.
At last. No. It's mine.
Triton got the trident, and Ursula got the nautilus shell. They were meant to rule together. However, Triton banished his sister after she used dark magic. That helps explain why she's so keen to wreak revenge on Triton. In the song, she also shares her plan to overthrow her brother and reclaim the sea. Ursula's going to use Ariel, who's described as the daughter with the beautiful voice that she takes for granted. Ursula sings about how a woman doesn't know how precious her voice is until she's been silenced. And so she plans to teach both Ariel and Triton a lesson. We've got some more fascinating theories about Ariel's voice coming up later, so keep watching. But back to the stage musical and another version of Ursula's tragic backstory. Seven Sisters. When the revised version of the stage show went on national tour, the song I Want the Good Times Back was replaced with a new one. The new song was called Daddy's Little Angel, and in this song we get a new backstory for the sea witch. Ursula was the youngest of seven sisters. They were all beautiful except for her. She sings about how her father Poseidon found her loathsome and disgusting. While her sisters were adored, Ursula was ignored. He gave her a magic shell to ease his guilt, but Ursula used the magic shell to get rid of all six of her sisters. So when her father passed, Ursula, as the eldest, became queen of the sea. However, she also had a little brother, Triton. When he came of age, he took over the kingdom, and that's why Ursula wants revenge on him.
I'll give him something to celebrate soon enough.
She sings about using Ariel to get to Triton, just like she used her sisters to get to her father. Interestingly, this backstory gives Ariel and Ursula a big thing in common. They're both the youngest of seven sisters. So now we have a couple of different backstories for Ursula. Are you ready for another one? Poor Unfortunate Soul. Ursula sings a song in the 1989 movie called Poor Unfortunate Souls. It could hold a clue about her past as Vanessa, but we'll get to that intriguing theory later. For now, we're focusing on the Disney novel about her backstory, which took that phrase as its title. Released in 2016, the book called Poor Unfortunate Soul, A Tale of the Sea Witch, gave us yet another version of Ursula's backstory. In this tale, Ursula is the adopted daughter of a human fisherman. She grew up not knowing about her powers or that she was King Triton's long-lost sister. However, her powers do get exposed, and the people in her village turn on her in a violent way. Her adoptive father tries to stop them, but passes away in the process. Understandably, Ursula gets pretty upset over the events. Grieving for her father, she tries to destroy the village, but King Triton reveals himself as her brother and takes her home to his kingdom. However, Triton thinks Ursula is an ugly monster as an octopus, so he doesn't allow her to be around his subjects in her octopus form. Triton's wife, Queen Athena, is the only one who's kind to her, but after Queen Athena passes, King Triton vanishes Ursula to the unprotected waters.
banished and exiled and practically starving.
So it's no surprise that Ursula is all about plotting revenge on her brother. All three of these backstories do have something in common, and that's the sibling relationship between Ursula and Triton. However, a sequel to the film gives us yet another look at Ursula's past, and it doesn't necessarily match up. Morgana. In the movie The Little Mermaid 2, Return to the Sea, we get introduced to Ursula's younger sister, Morgana. The direct-to-video sequel, which was released in the year 2000, shows us Ariel and her daughter, Melody. And this time, the villain position is filled by Morgana. Although Ursula doesn't actually appear in the movie, we do get a couple of glimpses of her. We learn that Morgana has always been jealous of her big sister, and she's tired of living in Ursula's shadow. We even get to see Ursula in her childhood, in a deleted scene. In fact, it's a deleted song called Gonna Get My Wish. Although it wasn't used, the song was fully animated. In it, we see how Morgana wanted the approval of her mother. She sings about how she's always been second best to Ursula and how she'll impress her mother when she steals the trident, which is where Ursula failed. We see Ursula with a first-place trophy, being praised by their mother. There is a way of tying these backstories together. Ursula and King Triton could have been half-siblings, sharing the same father but different mothers. Whichever version you believe is the most likely, they all give us an interesting insight into why Ursula was as evil as she was.
Don't fool with me, you little brat!
And we haven't even touched on Ursula's possible past as Vanessa. So let's dive into that right now. The Vanessa question. There's been a lot of chatter about why Ursula chose Vanessa as her human alter ego. She didn't need to look any particular way, as she was enchanting Eric, so she didn't need to find her looks appealing. That begs the question, why Vanessa? Why not any other kind of appearance? Ursula could have just made herself a copy of Ariel, or any other person for that matter. There are some really interesting fan theories about it. First up, let's examine Vanessa's similarities with Ariel. The two women have very similar facial features. Sure, Vanessa has dark hair compared to Ariel's red mane, but their eyes, noses, and mouths are very alike. Not exact copies, but similar. In a way that an aunt and a niece's features might be alike. Their resemblance makes perfect sense now that we know that Triton and Ursula might very well be siblings. Ursula was Vanessa. Let's take this a step further. Perhaps Ursula didn't invent Vanessa's looks out of thin air, but actually based them on herself and how she looked previously. The fangirl has come up with a theory that Ursula originally looks like Vanessa, just without the legs, and she previously used that appearance up on land, just like Ariel looks like herself when she turns from a mermaid to a human. That's right, this isn't Ursula's first foray out of the sea. She was so furious that her brother took away her oceanic powers that she sought control elsewhere. She put a spell on herself to become human so that she could find a position of power on land, perhaps by going after a king or a prince. That person could even have been Eric's dad. This would explain why she knows so much about the preferences of men when it comes to dating women. In her song, Poor Unfortunate Souls, Ursula displays her in-depth knowledge of the human world on land.
The men up there don't like a lot of blabber.
How did she learn the nuances of the dating game? Because she took part in it. Let's take a look at some of the song's lyrics. Ursula tells Ariel, the men up there don't like a lot of blabber. They think a girl who gossips is a bore. Yet on land, it's much preferred for ladies not to say a word. And after all, dear, what is the idle prattle for? It makes total sense that Ursula could only know all of that because she'd been on land herself before. After all, we've seen from Ariel's ignorance that the mer people don't know much about the human world. She doesn't even know what a fork is used for, let alone the intricacies of the dating game. Ursula continues to show Ariel her knowledge of the world above the sea by singing, they're not all that impressed with conversation. True gentlemen avoid it when they can, but they dote and swoon and fawn on a lady who's withdrawn. It's she who holds her tongue who gets a man. Now, of course, Ursula would say things like that to get Ariel to give up her voice, but she certainly seems to have first-hand knowledge of human relationships. All that suggests that she wasn't just enchanting men to love her when she first got her land's legs. She had to learn how to woo a man in the human world, and she might have given the humans a lot of information about the Mer Kingdom. After all, the sailors show their in-depth knowledge of life under the sea in the original Fathoms Below song. How could they have known about King Triton and Ursula being related? Perhaps she told them, but obviously something went awry, and Ursula ended up back in Atlantica. Perhaps she transformed transformed herself into an octopus woman as she came back under the sea. And maybe the humans saw that, and that's why they hung around the area, hunting mermaids. Ursula knew Vanessa. There's another fan theory this time on Reddit that Ursula based Vanessa's looks on a human woman she once knew. As Ursula gave her human form a plausible name,
"Congratulations, my dear,"
she made it clear it was someone specific and someone that she wanted to walk in the footsteps of. But she wouldn't want to risk taking the form of someone she might accidentally bump into. So she would have to base it on someone who couldn't possibly show up. Therefore, Vanessa would have been a real person that Ursula had met on land. She could have learned all about human life from her, but that woman was no longer alive, perhaps at the hands of Ursula herself. The theory goes on to suggest that the original Vanessa was a survivor of a shipwreck. Ursula met her on a desert island and planned to help her get back to the mainland. But then Ursula got concerned that Vanessa would spill all of the secrets about the underwater kingdom that Ursula had shared, so she had to sacrifice Vanessa for the good of her people. It's a pretty intense theory, right? But a super fascinating one nonetheless. Regardless of where Ursula got Vanessa's looks from, one thing's for sure. She used Ariel's voice when she took on her human form, and there's a theory about that too. Ariel's enchanted voice. Did you ever wonder why Eric was so enchanted by Ariel's voice? Perhaps it's not just that it sounds beautiful, but that it actually is enchanted. And that's why Ursula took it from Ariel. This is another fan theory on Reddit that we're totally into. To understand this idea, we need to look into mermaid folklore. It's a common trope that mermaids use their voices to lure sailors to the depths of the ocean. So it would make sense that Ariel had this power too. And she enchanted Eric with her voice when she rescued him. So that's perhaps why Ursula wanted Ariel's voice. Ursula knows that Ariel won't have the same enchanting power over Eric without her voice. We see the power that the voice has over Eric when Vanessa turns up on land. He's willing to marry her because of that voice alone.
We wish to be married as soon as possible.
This adds a whole new level of interest to Ariel and Eric's relationship. She doesn't realize that she's enchanted him, and it's not made explicit to the viewer that their love is based on enchantment. Otherwise, we would find it all kinds of wrong that Eric falls in love with her. So there you have it, Ursula's fascinating backstory. Which part of her tragic tale do you think is most likely? Weigh in with your opinion in the comments section below.